Early 2000s. A new millennium had just begun, filled with both promise and uncertainty. The world was rapidly changing, and the pace of technological advancement was accelerating. America's attention glued to the Middle East, consumed by the unfolding events and the strategic implications of the region. Wars, terror, oil. These were the dominant narratives shaping foreign policy and public discourse. The focus was laser-sharp, almost to the exclusion of everything else. Every headline, every policy, every dollar was funneled into addressing the immediate crises and long-term challenges in the Middle East: Iraq, Afghanistan, the war on terror. These became synonymous with America's foreign policy objectives, defining its role on the global stage. The rest of the world, especially Africa, faded into the background. It was a period of relative neglect, as other priorities took center stage. For many in the West, Africa was still seen as a place of poverty and charity, not partnership. The narrative was often one of aid and assistance rather than mutual benefit and collaboration. The US was busy exporting democracy with drones, focusing on security and stability through military means. China saw a different opportunity, a chance to forge new relationships and expand its influence on the African continent. While America was distracted, caught up in its own strategic priorities, a new player was quietly entering the game. China was eyeing Africa's resources, recognizing the vast potential that lay untapped beneath the surface. Its young population and its need for infrastructure, seeing the potential for growth and development. China's question wasn't, how can we help Africa? It wasn't about imposing conditions or dictating terms, but how can we work with Africa? A question rooted in mutual respect and shared goals. The US was preoccupied, leaving a vacuum, an opening for others to step in and fill the void. China stepped in with blueprints, checkbooks, ready to invest in Africa's future, and a simple pitch, a straightforward proposition that resonated with many African nations. You need roads? We build roads. We have the expertise, the resources, and the willingness to get the job done. You have resources? We buy resources. A mutually beneficial exchange that fueled economic growth and development. No lectures, no conditions, just business. A refreshing approach that prioritized practical results over ideological pronouncements. It was a fundamental shift, a paradigm shift in the way Africa engaged with the world. Partnership, not pity. Respect, not condescension. While America was fixing the car, preoccupied with its own internal issues and external conflicts, China was throwing the party, hosting a celebration of collaboration and mutual prosperity. Africa was ready for a new dance partner, eager to explore new opportunities and forge new alliances. China's approach was direct, practical, and business first, an approach that resonated with many African leaders and entrepreneurs. The world's focus was elsewhere, its gaze fixed on other regions and other concerns. But China was already moving in, seizing the moment and establishing a strong foothold on the continent. This was the start of a new era for Africa, a period of unprecedented growth, development, and transformation. And for global power, a shift in the balance of influence as new players emerged on the world stage. The stage was set for a transformation, a dramatic reshaping of the global landscape. No one in Washington saw coming. A blind spot that would have significant consequences for years to come. While America was deeply engaged in fighting wars across the globe, focusing its resources and attention on military interventions, China quietly, almost imperceptibly, began to land in Africa. It was a strategic move, carefully planned and executed. No fanfare, no grand announcements, just engineers, skilled and ready to work. Construction crews arriving in droves, ready to build and develop, and billions upon billions in loans, investment capital ready to fuel ambitious projects. China's economy was booming at an unprecedented rate, its factories churning out goods, and it desperately needed raw materials to sustain that growth, to feed its industrial engine, and new markets to sell its products, to expand its economic influence. Africa, rich in resources and potential, had both in abundance. China's ambitious go-out policy sent companies everywhere across the African continent, even to rural areas and remote villages that the West had long ignored or overlooked. The offer was simple yet compelling. Infrastructure development in exchange for access to resources. Highways stretching across vast landscapes. Modern port facilities to facilitate trade. Dams generating power. All built by Chinese companies and paid for with the continent's abundant oil or valuable minerals. There were no political lectures attached to these deals, no strings attached regarding democracy, human rights, or governance reforms. For many African leaders, weary of Western scrutiny, this pragmatic approach was a breath of fresh air, a welcome change. China treated them as equal business partners, fostering mutual respect, not as mere charity cases dependent on handouts. The West's aid programs often came with numerous conditions and requirements. China's deals, on the other hand, came with tangible results, cranes and concrete, infrastructure and progress. China's stated policy of non-interference in internal affairs meant no awkward or uncomfortable questions about governance, corruption, or human rights records. This approach, while controversial, built trust and established influence remarkably fast. While the West was still engaged in endless debates and discussions, China was already actively building, transforming the landscape of Africa. The result? A transformation that is still unfolding, a vast and intricate network of relationships, deeply interconnected partnerships, and a new power rapidly rising in Africa, reshaping the continent's future. The world, preoccupied with other matters, barely noticed this seismic shift. But Africa was irrevocably changing, embarking on a new chapter in its history. The real kickoff? The moment when China's engagement with Africa truly took flight? It can be traced back to the 2000 Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC. This pivotal event marked a turning point in the relationship between China and the African continent. Dozens of African leaders converged in Beijing, eager to forge new partnerships and explore opportunities for collaboration. Promises of debt relief were on the table, offering a fresh start for many nations burdened by heavy financial obligations. Aid packages were pledged, signaling a commitment to supporting development initiatives across the continent, and most importantly, discussions centered on expanding trade relations, paving the way for increased economic exchange. After FOCAC, money flowed fast, injecting much-needed capital into African economies. Investment poured in, fueling growth and development. Trade between China and Africa quadrupled in just 5 years, a testament to the deepening economic ties between the two regions. Chinese companies, backed by state loans and government support, signed deals everywhere, securing access to resources and markets across the African continent. They built the infrastructure to extract resources, the very foundation for future economic activity. Ports, railways, roads. Angola was a turning point, a prime example of the new model in action. $2 billion in Chinese credit, a substantial investment in the nation's future, repaid with oil, a resource-backed loan that fueled Angola's reconstruction. It rebuilt a war-torn nation, breathing new life into its economy and infrastructure. Chinese firms built roads, connecting communities and facilitating trade, hospitals, improving healthcare access for the Angolan people, schools, providing educational opportunities for future generations. No Western political strings attached, a key differentiator that appealed to many African nations. Ethiopia got a modern railway to the sea, a vital trade link that boosted its economy. Nigeria and Sudan saw oil and infrastructure deals, further solidifying China's presence in the region. Each project was a brick in China's foundation of influence, a carefully constructed strategy to gain a foothold in Africa. The U.S. built military bases, projecting power through security alliances. China built Africa's future, investing in its long-term development and economic prosperity. The transformation was visible, physical, and fast, a tangible demonstration of China's commitment to Africa. China's model, a strategic approach to development and investment, invest, build, and secure resources, a formula that proved remarkably effective. African nations got infrastructure, modernizing their economies and improving the lives of their citizens. China got what it needed, securing access to vital resources to fuel its own economic growth. This was a new kind of partnership, a departure from traditional aid models. Transactional but transformative, reshaping the economic landscape of the African continent. The world's attention was elsewhere, focused on other geopolitical hotspots. But China was laying the groundwork for a new era, quietly but decisively expanding its influence. Africa's landscape and its alliances were being reshaped as China emerged as a major player on the continent. The foundation was set, brick by Chinese brick, solidifying China's position in Africa for decades to come. By the late 2000s, China's projects in Africa got even bigger. The Belt and Road Initiative wasn't just a slogan, it was a continent-wide construction spree. Railways, highways, ports like Kenya's Standard Gauge Railway, slashing travel times and modernizing trade. Airports, dams, fiber optic cables, even government buildings, China built it all. These projects spurred growth, created jobs, and connected markets, but they also made African economies more dependent on China for trade and credit. The infrastructure boom was real, but so were the strings attached. China's presence was everywhere in the skyline, on the roads, in the data cables. For many Africans, this was progress they could see and use. For their governments, it was a balancing act: growth, but with new dependencies. The transformation was profound, but the costs were complex. Africa was on the move, powered by Chinese ambition. While China built, America focused on security. The US's main tools in Africa: drones, special forces, and military aid. AFRICOM, drone bases, and counter-terrorism defined US engagement. America's approach: eliminate threats, China's build opportunities. African leaders noticed the difference. In Washington, the talk was security and governance, often lectures and conditions. In Beijing, it was trade, investment, and infrastructure, practical, immediate results. US programs like PEPFAR and AGOA saved lives and boosted trade, but didn't reshape skylines. China's state-led model built railways and power plants at a speed the West couldn't match. America played chess, China played Lego, and had a castle to show for it. The split screen was clear: drones overhead, cranes on the ground. For Africa, the choice was visible. The continent was being built, and China was holding the blueprints. How did Africans feel? For many leaders, China was a welcome alternative. The West's approach often felt paternalistic. China arrived as a fellow developing nation. Leaders praised China's speed and efficiency. Projects discussed, then built. No endless studies, no lectures, just action. China respected sovereignty, didn't interfere in politics, and delivered results. But not everyone was happy. Protests erupted over labor practices and environmental concerns. Debt worries grew as Chinese loans piled up. The relationship was complex. Appreciation for development, frustration with side effects. Africans weren't passive. They wanted the best deal for their countries. China was a partner, not a savior, and Africans knew it. China's influence wasn't just concrete, it was digital. The digital Silk Road: Chinese companies like Huawei and ZTE built Africa's telecom networks. Fiber optic cables: 3G, 4G, now 5G, mostly Chinese hardware. Huawei offered affordable, high-tech equipment with easy financing. Most African data now flows through Chinese-built infrastructure. On the streets, Chinese brands like Tecno dominate phones designed for African needs. Dual SIMs, cameras for darker skin tones, affordable prices. Tecno beat Apple and Samsung. China didn't just build the networks, it sold the devices too. This created a digital ecosystem shaped by Chinese technology. China's digital reach is deep, from the cell tower to the smartphone in your hand. Africa's digital future is being built and branded by China. The influence is invisible, but it's everywhere. All this infrastructure came with a price: debt. Chinese loans fueled Africa's boom, but also sparked fears of debt-trap diplomacy. Critics warned China could seize assets if countries default, like Sri Lanka's Hambantota port. But the reality is more nuanced. China has cancelled and restructured loans, and rarely seizes assets. For African nations, the debt is a double-edged sword. It built roads and ports, but now eats up budgets. The challenge is to make sure the new infrastructure pays for itself. Dependency on a single creditor is risky. African leaders must balance growth with financial independence. The stakes are high. Mismanage the debt, and the costs could be severe. But without the loans, much of the progress wouldn't exist. The future depends on smart choices, not just big checks. Africa's economic fate is on the line. It's 2025. China is Africa's top trading partner, lender, and builder. The old world order is gone. Africa now has options and leverage. Beijing is at the table, and that changes everything. Is China's influence good for Africa? The answer: yes and no. The growth is real, but so are the dependencies and debts. Will this be a partnership of equals or a new kind of colonialism? The US is scrambling to catch up, offering investment and summits. But China's head start is huge. For Africans, this competition is leverage. They can play powers off each other for better deals. The new scramble for Africa is underway, but this time, Africans are dealing the cards. The challenge: use this moment to build a future that's truly their own. The opportunity: shape a continent not just financed by others, but led by Africans. The next chapter is being written now,